At this point, it had been about 24 years since the first believers were empowered by the Holy Spirit here in Jerusalem at Pentecost. Despite trials and tribulations, the Christian church had grown with remarkable success. Now, after 3 long years of journeys around the Mediterranean, Paul returned to Jerusalem to give a glowing report to James and the elders of the Christian church here about what God was doing in the spread of the gospel among the nations. But Paul returned to find controversy brewing, and it was a familiar one. As it turns out, the leaders of the church here were worried that Paul was urging Jews around the world not to follow the law after they became followers of Jesus. As you might recall from previous episodes, there was an ongoing question as to whether Christ-following Jews were required to follow the religious rituals of the Mosaic Law. The church in Jerusalem thought it wise for Paul to squelch the rumors publicly by ceremonially purifying himself. Paul was willing to comply for the sake of the church, so he got together with a few other men and started the process. However, just before he completed the 7 days of public rituals, Paul was stopped in his tracks. When the 7 days were nearly over, some Jews from the province of Asia saw Paul at the temple. They stirred up the whole crowd and seized him, shouting, "Fellow Israelites, help us! This is the man who teaches everyone everywhere against our people and our law and this place. And besides, he has brought Greeks into the temple and defiled this holy place." The whole city was aroused, and the people came running from all directions. Seizing Paul, they dragged him from the temple, and immediately the gates were shut. While they were trying to kill him, news reached the commander of the Roman troops that the whole city of Jerusalem was in an uproar. He at once took some officers and soldiers and ran down to the crowd. When the rioters saw the commander and his soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. Acts 21:27-32. The 4 towers of the Antonia fortress loomed over the northwest colonnade of the temple complex. A Roman garrison of about 600 soldiers was stationed there. They had direct access to the temple grounds, with orders to stop any riots or disturbances, such as the one that just broke out. One of the specific charges against Paul was that he brought a non-Israelite, specifically a Greek, with him to worship in the sacred portion of the temple grounds. This was a major offense, even punishable by death. According to Roman historian Josephus, there were numerous warning signs posted to that effect that separated the inner and outer courtyards of the temple. Although the account tells us that Paul was wrongfully accused of bringing Greeks into the sacred place, the charge was enough to cause a riot. In 1936, this inscription fragment was discovered near the Lion's Gate in Jerusalem. It is an example of one of the warning signs that Josephus wrote about. It basically said, "No foreigners allowed beyond this point," a clear warning that outsiders, those not part of the community of Israel, were forbidden to enter the inner sanctuary. This partial fragment is currently housed at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. However, it matches a complete version discovered in 1871, which is currently housed at the Istanbul Archaeology Museum in Turkey. Written in Greek, the full warning actually reads, "No foreigner is to go beyond the balustrade and the plaza of the temple zone. Whoever is caught doing so will have himself to blame for his death, which will follow." So the charges against Paul stuck. A riot ensued in the temple courtyard, and the Roman soldiers stepped in to prevent a vigilante killing. After the soldiers secured Paul, the commander gave him a chance to defend himself to the crazed crowd. Paul took the opportunity and delivered his case.